Vanquished is the #1 online addiction recovery program. Developed by Reverend Donald Kinnard. The program takes a holistic approach to addiction recovery. Using our proven strategy of 5 keys to addiction recovery, we have changed the world of online addiction treatment. The first key to ending an addiction is to recognize the problem. You cannot overcome your addiction if you are not willing to admit that you have a problem. The second key is to make a commitment to work a program to overcome your addiction. By committing to our program, you can begin to make progress in your recovery. The third key is finding and accepting a higher power. We must find something or someone we can believe in and put our trust in if we are to fully recover from our addiction. The fourth key is to learn how to apply the principles of our higher power into our life. The fifth key is honesty. Without honesty, your program will not work. 5. Keys to addiction recovery. First key, recognize the addiction. Someone with an addiction will crave a substance or other behavioral habits, such as gambling. 2 general signs of addiction include lack of control, social withdrawal, and ignoring risk factors. 3. With the right treatment, addiction can be managed successfully. Recognizing your addiction can be harder than it seems. General signs of addiction are lack of control, or inability to stay away from a substance or behavior. Decreased socialization, like abandoning commitments or ignoring relationships. Ignoring risk factors, like sharing needles despite potential consequences. Physical effects, like withdrawal symptoms or needing higher dosage for effect. These signs are commonly linked. The degree of intensity for each sign may depend on how long the addiction has been going on. A healthy person can usually identify a negative behavior and get rid of it. This is not the case with someone with an addiction. Rather than admit the problem exists, they'll find ways to justify and continue the behavior. The first step to getting help is being able to recognize the physical, mental, and emotional signs, like abrupt weight or personality changes in your friends or family members. If you or someone you know has an addiction, this course is meant for you. Second key, making a commitment to overcome the addiction. For some, drinking is all fun and games, but for others, drinking becomes a way of life that interrupts happiness, stalls productivity, and reduces overall quality of life significantly. When alcohol abuse turns into an issue of alcohol dependence, plagued by cravings and urges to drink despite the known consequences of such actions, making the commitment to quit can be challenging at best. Fortunately, with the right guidance, knowledge, and understanding paired with your ambition and courage to overcome alcohol abuse and quit drinking once and for all, you can get sober. You can quit drinking alcohol today. Weighing the pros and cons. The first step to making a formal commitment to quit drinking is to weigh the pros and cons associated with your alcohol use. Fortunately, the list of pros compared to the list of cons is usually enough to make a sound decision with a firm understanding that drinking is really not the right thing and that it really isn't helping anyone. Consider the pros to drinking. It's fun. It's relaxing. It's helpful when trying to unwind. Consider the cons to drinking. It causes problems in relationships. It costs a lot of money. It dips into bill money. It causes health problems. It creates challenges in social situations. It can lead to depression or anxiety. It interrupts job performance. The list of potential hazards or damaging effects that drinking has on social, emotional, health and individual statuses of an individual is most certainly longer than the list of potentially benefits associated with drinking. This alone should be enough to help you make the commitment to stop drinking and get help. Setting goals. Once you've made the wise commitment to quit drinking, you have to find a way to reach your goals and to stay sober. The decision to quit is one of the toughest decisions to make, but there will likely be a number of other challenges along the way too. Determine whether you need to completely quit drinking or whether you can still drink socially. This will depend on the severity of your alcohol abuse situation, whether you are addicted to alcohol and various other individual factors. Set a goal to quit for a specific period of time such as 30 days. Remember that goals must be both measurable and realistic, and they must also be attainable. It's not wise to set a general goal of just "I will quit drinking" because there's nothing to measure here. Instead, set a goal of "I will quit drinking for 30 days and then I'll go for 60. This goal is measurable, realistic, and attainable, which means it's essentially a good goal to shoot for. Preparing to meet goals. Now you have to prepare yourself for the temptation and cravings that are likely to come as you make the stride in the direction of your first 30 days sober. Preparing to meet your goals involves a little cleanup. You may need to remove alcohol from your home, let your friends and family members know that you are quitting and that you would appreciate not being involved in situations that involve alcohol, avoid situations in which you would be tempted to drink. What if relapse occurs? Part of recovery is the fact that relapse is a very common occurrence that does happen even to good people with good intentions. If you have set a goal to quit drinking and you make it a few days and then slip up and have a drink, don't fret over the fact that you relapsed. Instead, do your best to pick up in the recovery where you left off and set a new goal for yourself to stay sober for a longer period of time. Remember, every small goal equals triumphs that can lead to the achievement of a major goal, such as staying sober for 1 year or 5 years or 10 years or more. One thing that you should focus on if you do relapse is what occurred just before the relapse. Did you spend time with a family member or friend who was a bad influence? If so, you should avoid spending time with that person for a while. Did you have a bad day at work? If so, you should consider seeking other ways of coping with stress following a bad day. Did you get bored? If so, you should consider finding healthy activities that you can take part in when you have free time. The point here is that relapse is often triggered by boredom, stress, bad influences, or various other factors that can be avoided in the future if you pay close attention to what causes relapse and how you can prevent it later on. Don't focus on the negative aspects of the relapse, instead focus on the positive light that you have learned how to overcome it and continue to move forward with your recovery from alcohol abuse. Third key, finding and accepting a higher power. 5. Practical ways to increase spiritual awareness. Trust God. Clean house. Help others. We have all heard that one before. Sounds simple enough, but is it really that simple? The most common form of apprehension within recovery organizations, especially 12-step based programs, lies in the concept of finding a higher power. I have heard people say countless times that they do not get the whole God thing. These uncertainties are not without merit, and unfortunately, reluctance to find a higher power keeps many addicts from finding recovery and balance. With this article, we hope to share some personal experience regarding what it means to find a higher power, and more importantly, why believing in a power greater than yourself has huge benefits in recovery and in life. God and the 12 steps. Very few people come into a 12-step program with a clear understanding of their beliefs, and even fewer live in spiritual principles. Living in the spiritual principles is a concept outlined in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. The biggest mistake people make is assuming that a higher power is a predetermined concept that they are forced to accept. It is clearly stated in the Big Book that one should choose a God of his or her own understanding. This is very confusing for many people. So what does it mean exactly? We like to keep it very simple and take an open-minded approach in matters of God. Ideas will differ from person to person. I will speak to my own experience of the journey I took to find a higher power and how it has helped me. A higher power is simply something bigger than yourself. The idea is simple. It is something to belong to. People need to feel connected to something. It is human instinct for us to need to feel a part of and to feel like we belong. For me, a higher power was something as simple as energy. Like many other young people entering recovery, I was confused with how a God of my understanding would help me. I asked, what does God have to do with any of this? Many addicts spend their lives on a path governed by self-will. Self-will and control is an illusion, it only exists in our own perception of reality. Finding a higher power is a way to give up control and subsequently, give up the burden of the future. The only thing any of us can control are our own actions. That's it. Everything else is, and always will be, completely out of our control. Giving it to God is simply a medium to acceptance. The closer you are connected to your higher power, the easier it is to hand stuff over. Science and spirituality. When I first heard this idea, I was defensive. I spent so many years thinking that God was simply a mechanism human created to give clarity to things we don't understand. I didn't, and still don't, feel comfortable with the idea that life is predestined for us, by God. I am analytical, and I like empirical data. In the beginning of my recovery, I was simply taking things at face value. I was acting on suggestions given to me by other people. I heard that if I did these things, I would stay sober, and that's what I wanted. However, I could not deny that very little of this made sense to me. But I kept searching. Here is what happened for me. I do not say this to impose my beliefs on you. I am simply pointing out that if it is possible for me to find a higher power, it is possible for anyone else who may have doubts. I've always believed that everything in the universe has energy. Moreover, everything is energy. This is scientifically proven. Everything is connected. I studied this idea. It became clear to me that science and spirituality really aren't all that different. Everything in the universe is connected, the plants, the sky, the stars, and even gravity. It all interacts in perfect harmony to create this beautiful existence and relationship of energy. I realized that I already had a higher power. I didn't need convincing because it was based on fact. I found that merely being alive meant that I was connected to everyone around me and everything that will ever exist. This was such a revelation. I found something to believe in. At the time, I still didn't understand why I needed it. How can a higher power help me? Living in self-will brings a lot of pressure. When we try to control the outcome of things, we find that we have little success. Whatever happens, happens without our consent. Understanding that there is a governing force behind everything takes away the burden of control. Whatever is going to happen is just going to happen. The truth is, there is very little you or I or anyone can do about controlling the outcome of life. Surrendering control of results will free your mind and your spirit. Don't let the higher power dilemma keep you from living your life. An analogy that I find helpful is swimming up current in a river. The river is going to flow however it decides to flow. The river is more powerful than I am. I cannot control the river. What I can control is my actions. If I am stuck in a river, I can choose to fight the current. This will leave me exhausted and I will not get anywhere. I will waste energy. My other option is to let the river take me on its own course. So, I can save my energy and live with the results of where my higher power decides I should be. It is tough to not fight the current. It is tough to humbly admit that there is nothing I can do. I assure you, letting the current of life take you is much easier and a much more enjoyable way of life. A higher power will give you something to belong to. Belonging to something stronger than yourself gives you strength because you are no longer alone. You will be tapped into an infinite amount of energy. We need only to let go of control and listen to where our higher power is directing us. We all want to feel connected. How do I find a higher power? I realize that what I have said may not make sense to everyone. What is most important is that this message reaches those who are still confused about God. This all sounds well and grand, but how does someone come to believe? Here are a few straightforward tips that will help you find what you are searching for. 1. Be open-minded. Listen to everything people have to say. You don't have to agree with everyone. It is absolutely your right to disagree with someone's views. Still, listen with an open mind. Consume the information and then make a decision whether it works for you or not. You will find you have more in common with other people than you think. 2. Meditate. Be still. Listen. In life, and especially within our society, it is so difficult to quiet our minds. It is very hard to find peace with so much commotion going on around us all the time. Dedicate some time to be by yourself, no music, no cell phone, no TV. Sit still and practice being in the moment. Do this consistently and you will reach new depths of self-discovery. 3. Pray. Personally, when I pray I don't think anyone is listening. I am not convinced there is an all-knowing deity listening to what I have to say. The important thing is that when you pray, you are engaged with your higher power. You are forming a relationship with the governing forces of the universe. I can't explain how or why, but I promise you that the universe will talk back. 4. Help people. When you serve others, you are getting outside of yourself. When we help other people, all of our own fears and insecurities disappear because we are focused on something outside of ourselves. Serving others is a direct line to understanding a higher power. When you feel the result of a good deed, it is its own reward and you will likely feel a part of something much greater. 5. Keep searching. You must stay open to new ideas and discoveries. No one will ever completely understand God. The human condition does not allow for absolute clarity in this. The more answers you find, the more questions you will have. This is a good thing because your willingness to search is directly correlated with your willingness to grow. No matter how content, how old, or how confident we may become, it is critical that we always keep our mind and our hearts open. Conclusion. I want to reiterate that nothing I have said today is fact. This is simply an understanding I have formed based on my own personal experience. If you agree with what I have said, that's great. If I helped you in any way, that's even better. If you think everything I have said is horse shit, that is perfectly fine. The important part is to see that we all have our own journey and all of us can find that peace and serenity that comes along with being a part of something bigger than ourselves. When I look up at the night sky and I know that yes, we are part of this universe, we are in this universe, but perhaps more important than both of these facts is that the universe is in us. 4th key, applying the principles of the higher power into your life. Just do it, the power in applying spiritual principles. For years I built a library of spiritual books. I was hungry for truth and would devour volumes of teachings of all different philosophical backgrounds. As my comprehension of spiritual principles deepened, I became very aware that even though I let things roll off my back a lot easier, I wasn't seeing any real change in my life. I still felt poor, overworked, frustrated with my career, underappreciated, and my cripplingly low self-esteem hadn't gone anywhere. What was up with that? All these self-help books promised transformation and I expected to see it. What eventually became clear was that all these spiritual practices are great but won't do a thing for me until I actually practice them. I was reading and talking a lot about spirituality, but I wasn't actually applying the practices into my life. Turns out transformation is a result of application. I resisted applying the tools because deep down I was scared to confront the beliefs that were creating upset in my life. I knew how to be miserable, but I had no idea how to be really happy. Intuitively I understood that it was time to release the baggage that was pulling me down. There were certain resentments I spent years cultivating and I wasn't sure if I was ready to let them go, not to mention the worldviews I knew were accurate. When I became more interested in experiencing love than being right, so many of the judgments I valued effortlessly melted away, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Are you really familiar with Amazon's self-help section but still haven't significant change in your life? Have you gone to the weekend-long self-empowerment retreats and left feel not so empowered? Have you yogaed, cleansed, and sweat yourself silly without feeling any better? Yep, I've been there. I've been to every guru, shaman, life coach, and weekend retreat. I've stretched, sweat, and spent thousands on books, workshops, and psychics, and what I learned was that finding God in Los Angeles can be very expensive. The answer is within you now. If you're really interested in discovering that for yourself, then I invite you to develop a spiritual practice that makes sense and begin to apply the principles you've read so much about. Allow the spiritual tools to do what they're designed to do, remove all the false ideas and beliefs that are telling you that there's something wrong with you. It's in the application of the practices that you begin to see the beneficial results that you're really interested in. It's about time, right? Less talking and debating, more sitting and allowing, and smiling, my God, more smiling. Fifth key is honesty. The importance of honesty in recovery. Honesty is a moral characteristic. Honesty is one of the most respected of all moral characteristics. If it becomes known that a respected individual has behaved dishonestly, it can cause devastating harm to their reputation. Some types of dishonesty are more acceptable than others. Most people tell fibs or white lies from time to time. There is even therapeutic fibbing. Other people would claim that all types of dishonesty are bad. Those people who are trying to rebuild their life after an addiction need to pay particular attention to honesty. They need to not only be truthful with other people, but more importantly with themselves. Failure to establish honesty as a personal quality may mean that the individual will be more at risk of relapse. It could also mean that they live a life in recovery that is not fulfilling. It could lead to dry drunk syndrome. Dishonesty in addiction. Those who become addicted to alcohol or drugs will usually live a life that involves plenty of dishonesty. This is because substance abuse is going to bring them in conflict with many people. In order to avoid such conflicts, the addict needs to lie. So when their boss wants to know why they are not at work, they might claim that they picked up some type of stomach bug. The life of an addict tends to involve telling one lie after another, and more lies to cover previous lies. The most damaging of all will be the lies that the addict tells themselves. All addicts rely on self-deception and denial in order to keep abusing their favorite chemicals. The evidence of the destruction caused by their addiction is usually plain for everyone else to see, but the addict is able to hide from this truth. It is only when the evidence of the destructiveness of their behavior becomes too overwhelming to ignore that most will develop a willingness to change. Honesty is what finally leads people into recovery, and it is this that then keeps them there. Reasons for dishonesty in recovery. There are a number of reasons why people in recovery will behave dishonestly, including they fear the consequences of their actions and so lie to protect themselves from these consequences. Lying is a habit. The more people do it, the more they are likely to do it in the future. It is easy to slip into the habit of lying until dishonestly just becomes an almost automatic response. Dishonesty can produce desirable outcomes both socially and economically. There is therefore the temptation to use this as a tool to fulfill desires. The problem is that the long-term consequences of dishonesty are usually negative. Addicts tend to lie without even realizing it. This is because they are so self-deluded that they are unable to see the truth. Even those who give up alcohol and drugs can still become self-deluded again in the future. Some lies may be said to protect other people and so may be considered relatively harmless. For example, if a friend pays for an expensive new haircut, it might be hurtful to say that they don't look very attractive. Another example of dishonesty that would be considered acceptable is telling children that Santa Claus is coming. The dangers of dishonesty in recovery. Dishonesty in recovery is dangerous because it is a common relapse trigger. It means that the individual is returning to old ineffective coping strategies for dealing with life. The most common reason why people relapse after a period of sobriety is that they become stuck in recovery. This often happens because they have stopped being honest with themselves and other people. They feel unwilling to face a challenge on the path before them, so they try to hide from it in denial. No further progress can occur until the individual can clearly acknowledge what the problem is and be willing to take action to remedy the situation. If friends and family find out about this dishonesty, it can destroy any progress that has been made in rebuilding relationships. Programs such as the 12 steps require that people are rigorously honest. If the individual begins to behave dishonestly, it will mean that they will unable to benefit from this program. Dishonesty can lead to feelings of guilt afterwards. The individual who is dealing with too much guilt in recovery can find it hard to discover real happiness. It was the failure of the individual to be honest with themselves that kept them trapped in addiction. If they allow self-deception to once again take hold of their life, then they are likely to question the value of sobriety and the need to refrain from alcohol and drugs. Honesty allows for healing of the individual and those close to them. If people continue to be dishonest, then it means that this healing will not take place. If people are attending any type of therapy, then it is vital that they are truthful during these sessions. If there is no honesty, there can be little benefit from such treatment. How to increase honesty in recovery? Honesty is a key element of any successful life away from addiction. It is therefore important that people develop this moral characteristic. Here are a few ways to increase honesty in their recovery. The key to breaking away from dishonesty is to admit when it has occurred as soon as possible afterwards. Those who are in a 12-step fellowship will be asked to do this as part of Step 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted to it. It can be hard to own up to dishonesty, but it makes it harder to be dishonest in the future. Developing honesty is like building up muscles. The more people do it, the more honest they become. Keeping a journal is a useful way to track behavior. It gives people the opportunity to look back on their day to look for any examples of dishonest behavior. Journaling also reduces the risk of becoming caught up in self-delusion because things appear clearer when they are written down on paper. If people do not value honesty, then they will not put much effort into living a life that is built upon it. Therefore, it is vital that the individual has a clear understanding of the importance of honesty, and the dangers of dishonesty in recovery. It is usual for people to play down the significance of certain lies. They can justify the telling of white lies. While there are times when telling a lie might be the less of two evils, it is not a good idea to view any type of dishonesty in recovery as acceptable. Ideally, the individual should be aiming for complete honesty, although they are unlikely to ever achieve this. To start your recovery, join the Vanquished online addiction recovery program today. Visit www.vanquishedaddiction.com.